Good day, everyone. Father Neil Dadey here with you once again, just to share just a small little spiritual meditation upon one of my most favorite saints, Saint Therese of Lisieux, or Saint Therese the Little Flower. Her feast day we celebrated yesterday, on Thursday, October 1st. Saint Therese was born in France in 1873. She died in 1897. She lived just a very brief 24 years upon this earth. But within those 24 years, as Pope Pius XI called her, one of the greatest saints that ever lived. Why would she be called one of the greatest saints? It's very simple. Saint Therese, her spirituality was one that everyone could emulate and live by. Her spirituality was not something that was so highfalutin or so far above the ordinary person. Her spirituality and the main focus of her spiritual life was the little way. The little way of spiritual childhood. And she would compare her little way to a child who is, when you look at it in human terms, a child who has parents, a child who knows that he or she will be taken care of by her parents, a child who knows that their parents will provide for them, a child knows that their parents will always be there for them, a child knows that on this earth there will be nothing that the child will not need, that the parents will provide for them. And she uses this analogy, she uses this example, and she places that upon her own spiritual life in her relationship with God. She says the exact same thing, that she, like a little child, rests in the arms of the Father. She, as a little child, knows that she will be taken care of. As a child, God will provide. As God's child, He will watch over her. As God's child, she has nothing to fear. That all she wants to do is to abandon herself into the loving arms of the Father. And even she said in her story of a soul, she goes on to say that if she would even commit any and every sin possible, she would still have the audacity, in her term, not mine, the audacity to throw herself into the loving arms of the Father, asking for forgiveness, knowing that her sins would be burned up in the fire of His love. That is a confident child speaking about a parent. And that's what Therese, for me, speaks personally. That to develop that spiritual childhood, to develop that total dependence upon God. And yes, even in the midst of life's difficulties, the pandemic that we have been enduring since March, situations at our home, situations at work, situations wherever we find ourselves that maybe life has thrown us some curveballs, Saint Therese speaks to us and says, trust in God. Have faith in Him. Rely upon Him. He will pick you up and carry you in His arms. If only we could live that. Her spiritual doctrine, she was considered a doctor of the church. She was named a doctor of the church by Saint Pope John Paul II because he saw in her spirituality, in her writings, the true gospel lived out. And that's for us. Her spirituality, her little way, is just not for some highfalutin spiritual person, but is for the everyday Joe and Mary, that you and I walk this earth trusting in God's love, trusting in His providence, trusting in His guidance, and at times His forgiveness. So for those of us who consider ourselves unimportant, little, unnoticed, St. Therese speaks volumes to us. May our life mirror spiritual childhood. May our life always be dependent upon God. May our life truly be lived as a child, resting in the arms of a loving Father. St. Therese, the little flower, pray for us. May God bless you, and may you always remain His child.